Hello, 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 and welcome back for another episode of the Corona Spotlight 2020. I am your host, Gail Nicholson. Thank you so much for joining me again today. Today is Thursday, May 7th, and this is the last live Corona Spotlight 2020 that you'll see for a little while. I am going to be in transition to another space, another office, and we're taking some time to actually get the new house all set up. So the next live Corona Spotlight will not be until the 18th of May. But in the meantime, I'm playing with the idea of putting on a top five list. So you might see us around, it just won't be live. Now, that housekeeping taken care of, I want to thank you very much for showing up today. And I want to introduce to you this very amazing lady that I've met online. Her name is Louise Armstrong. And one of the things that fascinated me about her is not just that she knows what she's talking about. I mean, that's great. That's top of the list. But also that she's built a group on Facebook to over 5,000 members. I think it's around 5,600, talking about life and relationships. And the advice and the interaction in this group is stellar. So I want to talk to her a little bit about that, as well as all of the other things that she's got going, because she too is one of the people that knows what it takes to actually recover from trauma. And it's not pharmaceuticals. So without further ado, help me please welcome Louise Armstrong, Emotional Intelligence Mastery at louisearmstrong.com. Thanks so much for being here today, Louise. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me and a wonderful warm welcome. It's a real honour and a privilege.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about how you got to the point in your life where you're at right now with emotional intelligence mastery, with the relationship and life group, and what drove you to get there, so to speak.
In a nutshell, because it's been quite a long journey, and I spent most of my life with a very destructive relationship with my mother, which actually spilled over to me having many destructive relationships in my life, which was affecting my health in a serious way and my finances. And it wasn't until I threw myself into therapy and coaching that anything started to change. And it was from this place that I was actually invited to train as a coach myself, because the transformation was so phenomenal. The changes inside me were unreal to how they showed up in everyday life. So I trained as a coach, and then from there I realized so much stuff starts in childhood. Just about everything really does begin under the age of 7. So I started my psychotherapy training, and more recently I'm a brain working recursive therapy, BWRT. Google it. It's the most amazing modality I've come across. And so I built a Facebook group that's still growing for women alone, women only, and we talk about all sorts of things under the sun, and I share a lot of lives and posts. And I understand trauma. I understand what it's like to feel intense shame, resentment, frustration, pure anger. I understand all those emotions. You know, all of us have had something go on in our lives, and we don't really know what it's like for that person because we're not in their shoes. But what does bring us together, and I'm hugely passionate about, is we all share similar emotions, and it's that deep shame that brings women together. It's, you know, the knowing that someone else feels resentment, etc. So there's a big thing going on there in our group. So that's why I do what I do today, and I've built my business really on my personal, you know, experience and personal transformation.
Excellent. Yeah, my mother used to say, "Write what you know," right? Um, and it's always it's funny because I've talked to a number of people in the course of doing this Corona Spotlight, and the recurring theme is essentially that our lives are literally our university for what our purpose is to contribute, and the lucky ones actually get to embrace that and go do that. Whereas others aren't so lucky. They're in jobs that they're complaining about. Well, at least until now, right? There's a lot of people
Yeah, right.
that are in transition going, okay, maybe I don't have to go back to that job. That's nice, you know. But yeah, for a lot of us that are in the helping professions, we got there because of the help that we needed. We had to find for ourselves. So thanks for pulling through the hard times and then becoming a contributor to health and well-being on the planet. That's really awesome stuff. So specifically during this virus, I know you've had a lot of stuff going on, but specifically during this virus, how have you been able to help people deal with what's happening for them?
In many ways, but I think if we just drill down, the most specific thing is helping our staff on our national health service here in the UK, which is our big organisation, our medical organisation, if you like, that houses anything from hospitals to care workers. And so a group was set up called Frontline, and members who are qualified in brain working recursive therapy have been invited to come forward voluntarily and help anyone who needs that assistance to keep them really on that front line. So I've helped anyone from surgeons to nurses to pharmacists, and actually the network has just gone out. We're going a little bit broader now to many more key workers in society, which will be from our shopkeepers down to our people who look after domestic refuse. So it's going to be a lot, and teachers are a lot broader. And so I'm going to continue on with this work, because what is happening is they are finding much more trauma in work with the nature of the business, with the nature of the virus. There's been, a lot more casualties. They've been a lot quicker. There's been a lot of stuff going on that has triggered their own insecurities, that have triggered their own, feelings and anxieties that they already have. And so I've been able to use this brilliant modality, brain working recursive therapy, to really help them change their response to any, and what it does is change your response to any given situation. So what it means is if they've had a bad day or traumatic day the day before, they can get back and they can go back to work, to really be there for us. So it's been the most remarkable time for me. They are so grateful, these people. It's amazing.
That is absolutely phenomenal. And first of all, thank you for doing that and being a volunteer to be able to do that. I'm fascinated by what you're telling me because for years I've done trauma recovery work with tapping and EFT, and usually that's very much after the fact, right? Dealing on stuff from before. But this BWRT, it sounds like it also can work in the midst of trauma, whereas it's always been kind of a mindset for me that's, or maybe it's just my exposure to it, that it's that my techniques are always after the fact. Like there's a time lag between the trauma and when the trauma symptoms start showing up, right? So is that accurate, that this stuff actually helps work in real time as trauma is being initially processed, as well as taking care of the echoes that have happened from before that are being reactivated by the current trauma? Is that correct?
That is correct, and you're absolutely right that most modalities, and I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist, so I'm used to dealing with emotions. So most therapies help us to change how we feel, because 95, 96, 97, 98, there's a variance on this, but it's a massive part of our subconscious mind, drives our behaviors, and that's how we feel. So most modalities do deal with the subconscious mind, which houses our emotions. That is the end product. When you have got a feeling, that is the end product. We're at the end of the line there, actually. It's traveled a long way along a whole set of a neural network. Mm-hmm. It's also the mind, which is very elusive. You can't, it's not tangible. You can't actually cut your head in half and see the mind as such. Right. Whereas with BWRT, we're dealing with the very first response that comes into the system. So we're focusing on the brain, which is a very, very different thing altogether. The very old brain, the reptilian brain, and it has one function: your survival. That's it. And so it's looking the whole time for a match, and it's scanning the room. It's scanning 24/7. It works for you, even when you're asleep. And it's scanning around for any sign of threat. Right. And what it does is it matches what you already have inside of you. So it will match something to a past memory. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what a pen was or a car was, etc. That's how we're created as human beings. And so if you are triggered by something, a person, a situation, or people, or a past memory, it looks for that match. And if it was in some way fearful last time, bing, that's it. It triggers that fear. It travels down a neural pathway 0.5 of a second before you're even aware of it. So that's why we're dealing with such an early response. You then become aware of that fear. As soon as you're aware of something, you feel it. So it goes into the brain, conscious mind, and then we feel it. So we are changing the response before conscious awareness, because you don't actually have free will in the way you think you do. Right. Because if I was to throw a ball at you right now, you would automatically catch it, duck from it, or push it away from you. It's an automatic response. And this is exactly what anxiety is. This is how we respond to everything. Most of the time, about 96, 97% of the time, automatically. So we're not even thinking about it, Does that make sense in a nutshell?
Yes, absolutely does. It absolutely does. And it's fascinating to me, because when I talk about the EFT and the tapping and what it's doing, right? And we're going in there and we're literally breaking a connection that was made at that moment of the trauma where you went, or whatever, you may not have actually done that intake of breath, but there's that initial moment, right? That locks things in and ties things together. And that's what you're going in and addressing, but before it even has a chance to trigger any of the other cascading awarenesses of it. That's amazing.
That is the key.
Oh, yeah. I love it. So let's talk a little bit more about, like you said, when you're dealing even with these first responders and stuff, what they're dealing now is, in some cases, layers of echoes from trauma from the past that are matches that are being brought up in the present. So tell us a little bit more about how, like, childhood trauma, the things that happened to us before age 7 that we've decided are bad or wrong, or something that we don't ever want to have happen again, how does that come back and haunt us in the present?
Yeah. Okay, I mean, it shows up in so many areas of our lives. You can see it through addiction, you can see it through broken relationships, you can see it through people being really unhappy at work, you can see it in so many health issues. It comes out, it shows itself, it presents itself in so many areas. And most of our patterns and our programs are formed under the age of around 7 years old, and that's because there's no filter. Everything just gets dumped in that subconscious mind. As we grow, between the ages of around 7 and 13, a filter develops. And that filter is basically to keep anything else out. It just wants whatever's been formed under the age of 7 to stay in there. That is your program. That's going to be how you live your life. And anything else that comes in will just get rejected. That's a very basic terms. So if somebody grows up with, and it doesn't even have to be trauma, we've all got stuff. It's just some people have a chasm of stuff and some people may just have a little scratch. So if you grow up with feelings that you're not good enough, you're told to be quiet, you are not allowed to express any emotions around anger or resentment or jealousy, you will keep these inside of you and they will grow and manifest, because these emotions are energy and energy's got to move. And so it will come and show in later life in all sorts of ways, where you go ballistic over someone spilling a cup of coffee, etc. in that way. So all emotions need to be expressed. And in order to be a human being, we need to embrace all of our emotions, but most of us like to shove the negative ones away. We don't like to feel that there were those sorts of people.
So I will confess, yesterday I had to acknowledge to my husband that I was angry at him because it was much safer than crying in front of him.
There you go. Brilliant. Absolutely. And anger, is a primal emotion. We all feel anger, and it often houses a lot of emotions underneath it. The real upset, the real pain, and the real hurt. And so, anger's we all have anger, and we always will, because we need anger as well.
Mm-hmm.
So these things show up in life as they've been suppressed from being a small child, and most people don't realize it. And they will show up as anxiety, they'll come out as depression. As I say, people have very, very poor relationships, and they follow the same pattern. I cannot tell you the amount of people I've helped in couples counseling who have done exactly the same pattern on their third marriage. Different people, different place, different country even. And so we all follow these patterns, but it's up to us as adults. If we're not happy with the way we're living and with the way we're feeling, we have to change these patterns. And it's by understanding that these patterns and programs are malleable, they are changeable, and they're probably not yours if you're not in alignment with them. And if they're not yours, you're living someone else's life. And so it's all about getting aligned into what you believe. And it's okay to feel angry sometimes, and it's okay to feel frustrated, and it's okay to feel all these feelings are absolutely okay, but nobody wants to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm. And I think because of the fact that we are unwilling to acknowledge it and unwilling to accept these feelings as okay, we're never taught properly how to express them.
Yeah.
What it's not the feeling that's not okay, it's the behavior that you acted out with that, maybe we could go a better way on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Now, not just this BWRT, but you've got a number of other techniques and strategies in your tool belt, so to speak. How else do you help people and move forward, like after trauma?
After trauma, yeah. So we do a lot of BWRT, and it's got a lot of different strands to it as well. As I'm also a trained clinical hypnotherapist, that's a lot of talk therapy with somebody in the hypnotic state. So we can really bring out what is stuck in that subconscious mind, what is keeping that person stuck, because the problem is never the problem. I have never seen anyone come into my office space face to face or online with the problem. The problem is always something else, going on there. And so a lot of therapy will be about discovering what is the cause, because I'm very passionate of finding out what is the cause. We don't just want to stick a plaster over it. We want to really get to the cause and allow that emotion to drain out of that memory. Because when we drain the emotion out, that memory, if you like, becomes what I call like a skeleton. Because in order for a neural pathway to connect and to create that feeling by the neurons, you have got to fire it. And when you fire it, they wire together. And every single time that happens, you have that feeling. And so we drain that energy out of it. So you're left with this skeleton. So I can remember my whole past. It's not that I'm delusional and I've forgotten my past. I absolutely know it. But it does not dictate my present moment or my future, because there's no energy in it.
Yes.
Your energy, whatever you focus on, wherever your energy is what will be your reality. And so that's what we need to change, basically, the depth of the neural pathways, so that when you're in alignment, things get triggered that are neural pathways that, feel right for you, that they're your beliefs.
Right. You remind me, when I'm working with people with the tapping, what I tell them is, you retain your memory, but the emotion disappears. It dissipates, right? And
Absolutely.
I'm so aligned with what you're talking about, because that's the whole point, is that energy charge that is causing that stuck connection to not turn off, right? Breaking that connection helps to, let that energy go, for one thing, so the cycles don't keep repeating themselves, and you can actually break the energetic addiction to those feelings too. Yeah, because I deal with a lot of people that they've almost developed an addiction to rage, or an addiction to sadness, where if they're afraid to let it go, because there's no other options to choose from for them. That's all they know how to feel anymore. Yeah. So this is really, really amazing and important work. And it's work that I salute you, because it can't be done through pharmaceuticals. Um, it has to be done through interaction. It has to be done through energetic exchange, whether that's talking, whether, the work that you do.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And that addiction, is there's a lot of stuff going on now. Loss aversion, people don't want to let go of something unless they know exactly what they're going to have, and there's no proof and it's not tangible, the joy and the happiness. And if your reptilian brain is just repeating what it's always repeated because it knows it keeps you alive, and you're drinking half a bottle of vodka a day, or you're feeling extremely angry and hitting out every day at someone, you're going to do the same thing. It wants you to do the same thing, and that's why the strength to pull you back to do the same thing is so powerful. We keep falling down, because it believes, because you've trained it so well, it believes this keeps you alive. You gotta keep feeling angry, anxious, depressed, addicted, whatever. And so it is a push pull.
Yeah. And it's funny, because when I talk with some people, it's like, you're not broken. You are working exactly as you were designed to work. And that's like that reptilian brain. You look at it and you go, oh God, why can't I get over this? Why can't I get out of this emotional rut? Because your reptilian brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do to keep your being alive. Now,
And that's it.
yeah, and so, yeah, I think it really helps people to understand that they're not broken, they're not doing it wrong,
No.
right? There's just a matter of retraining necessary, and maybe we need to
Absolutely.
unplug a few things in order to get the right circuits flowing,
Exactly. Because
right?
you're only born with two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Everything else is learnt. So because it's learnt, you can unlearn it. And we're all born with absolute pure energy, pure energy. You're not born with anger or nastiness or confidence. You're not born with any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They are programs that you develop as a small child, but you are much more powerful than your programs. These are just a bunch of programs that drive your behavior. But when you understand that pure energy that you tap into when you're quiet, when you're in meditation, when you're in nature, when you are prepared to take that time alone, that pure energy is your pure essence. That's still you. That's still the real you. You just got a bunch of programs pushing you to do stuff that isn't really your stuff. And so
Right.
you are greater than this bunch of programs.
That's phenomenal. Now, you're offering our audience today a free gift, this emotional intelligence mastery PDF. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that's going to help our audience?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a little free PDF that you can download on the front page of my website. And it's all about you changing the perspective of yourself. So there's basically 5 stages, because when you change the perspective of yourself, you then get to choose what emotions and thoughts and actions you take. So you actually become in command of what you are going to think and how you're going to act and feel about something. When you're at that stage, you then show up in the world as this different ball of energy, if you like, and you relate to others. And you relate to others without that mask in front of you, without your filter. So you can see someone for exactly who they are. And when you can see someone for who they are and not who they are projecting, this is how we form much deeper relationships. And when you're in this place, you are then much more able to do the really deep inner child work, the really, really deep healing. And when you go through this process, you are then in a place of consciousness to design a future that you want. Because if you are trying to design a new future, but you're thinking, you're automatically in the past. And if you're in the past, you're going to create an identical future. So there is a kind of 5-step process that I very broadly overrun in this little PDF. And it is the absolute basis of all my private work, of all my group coaching, and my online courses, and my latest book as well. So
Awesome.
it all comes under the one fabric, because it is a process, eh?
Right, right, absolutely. And that's a beautiful segue, because I was going to ask you about your new book yet. We are in the pre launch phase, correct? You're just launching it, and that was yesterday. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, super excited. It's called Change How You See Yourself Today. And it's a self-help book. It's 12 chapters with 6 chapters of healing and 6 chapters of going forwards in life. And there's some hypnosis recordings I've included in there as well. There's a lot of tools in there. There's a lot of techniques in there that are all proven over many, many years of me helping my clients, and all the testimonials I have had with my group program. It's what I call a journey of healing, to stop feeling anger, to really accept that past. And when you can do that, you really can live that best life that's right for you. So yeah, I'm super excited. I want to spread this message so far, because what I truly believe is nobody knows what to do. And that was me for years. I hadn't got a clue. I was always looking outside of me, always blaming everybody else, always everyone else's fault. It was always everyone else's problem. And I truly believe once you understand some of the things to do, that's when transformation happens.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I 100% agree with that. Once you realize that if you can take responsibility for your own life, then you get to be in charge of how your life goes, and you're not a victim any longer. Life doesn't happen to you. You happen to life. Right? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, awesome stuff. Absolutely. Really great. First of all, I want to thank you again for doing what you're doing with the National Institute of Health over there in the UK, and helping the first responders dealing with their trauma, so they don't have to, 3-4 years down the road be blindsided by, whatever coming back at them then. So thank you for what you're doing, for your people, for the world, actually, at this point. Very, very much. And all of the other stuff that you've got going as well. I personally am really looking forward to your book, because I think that I will be absolutely fascinated with everything that you've got in there, and it will be very helpful to me as well personally. That said, I want to give you a few moments. Do you have any final thoughts for our audience before we close up for the day?
I'd just like to end with that whatever stage you're at in life, and whatever your childhood was like, or whatever's going on, however bad it is, I promise you there's hope. Absolutely, there's hope. Anyone can change. So just don't stay where you are. One of the hardest things is to put your hand up and say, it's not working for me. And the day that you do that is the day your life changes. So there's always hope. And I leave you with that message.
Thank you so much for being here today, Louise. Take care.
You're welcome. Thank you.
When you open yourself up to actual energy work, makes that recovery progress so much faster. That recovery is possible. You do not have to live as a victim until your last days. You have unbelievable strength, and I know that because you're still here. Do you want to create something completely unrecognizable with your life? I can show you how.